conservative assassin, truth stay shining, busting on you wizards so the truth stay climbing. Conservative assassin, truth stay shining, busting on you wizards so the truth stay climbing. Conservative assassin, truth stay shining, busting on you wizards so the truth stay climbing. Conservative assassin, truth stay shining, busting on you wizards so the truth stay climbing.
Hello, everybody. Welcome in again. Welcome in on this wonderful Sunday evening. I'm glad to have you. Conservative Assassin. Of course, we're on episode 17, and we are the anti-PC live stream community where we expose lies and exalt truth. And why are we anti-PC? I don't think I've ever explicitly stated it, but the reason is because political correctness is retarded, and it's stupid, and it's nothing more than a construct to control information and suppress criticism. You know, it's the invention of the little special boys who don't want anybody to criticize them. But, you know, we ain't falling for it. It's PC's total nonsense, and that's why we're not neutral on the issue. We are anti-PC, because political correctness, by the way, is anti-biblical, and of course, we are pro-biblical. At any rate, as I said, it's episode 17 tonight. And the topic of our discussion is going to be socialism, the evil thievery of anti-American douchebags. And this stream is by special request. What's up, guys? I see you there. Try to keep track of these comments as we go along here. But this stream was by special request. Now, socialism or discussing socialism doesn't particularly excite me, just because on the face of it, it's just so retarded. I mean, it's about as stupid as can be. And by my estimation, it doesn't mean, I mean, I don't need much explanation, but apparently some people do, because some people are tricked by the nonsense. But at any rate, appreciate all the support. Got to give shouts out to everybody. Wifey, Russell fam, G1 fam, Big Bear, Cross Culture. That's Cross Lower T Culture. Check them out on YouTube and Facebook. And of course, Java Joe, the Caffeinated Assassin, all legends. So if you have not yet, like the video, share, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell so you get the notifications when we go live, and leave some comments. Now, I have good news, at least somewhat good news, I suppose, and that is that we just broke 800 subscribers on the YouTube channel just today. And so if things keep trending the way that they are, we should break 1,000 before the end of this coming week. And when we break 1,000, that gives us the ability to do some pretty cool stuff. I think one of the things that I would like to do that it doesn't allow me to do right now, that you can do after you get 1,000 subscribers, is that you could have members. And the cool thing about membership is that you can actually modify your name so that when you participate in the chat, you can have a custom name. Now, you know, from the very beginning, I said that I'd like everybody to have, you know, like an assassin name. Joe stepped up and said he wants to be the Caffeinated Assassin. So once we're able to do that, then in the comment feed, it'll just simply say Caffeinated Assassin, and then as we'll build the community in that way. But why assassin anyways? And that is just because, you know, we murder bad ideas. That's what we do. You know, we cast down imaginations and everything that exalts itself against the knowledge of Christ. And we're Christ-servative, not conservative. We're Christ-servative. That means we serve Christ. Politics don't particularly excite me, but there is a necessary requisite for me to engage in it, because they're constantly trying to shove nonsense down my throat. But at any rate, let's get into it tonight. Socialism, you know, you may have heard that it has been said that if anyone would not work, neither shall he eat. And I like that. I like that a lot. And of course, those are the words of the Apostle Paul. And I want to say it one more time. He said, if any would not work, neither should they eat. Now, of course, this flies in the face of socialism, because socialism thinks everybody should get a free lunch, right? You know, it's a bunch of little special boys catering to the little special boys. Of course, under the I guess direction of the satanic controllers and so forth. But King Solomon also said this. He said, the sluggard will not plow by reason of the cold. In other words, a sluggard is lazy. And he says, therefore shall beg and harvest and have nothing. And I like that a lot. That means if you don't contribute, you get zero. And of course, this flies in the face of socialism and so forth. But, you know, truth be told, socialism is out of the closet in America, of course, under the pretense of what is now called democratic socialism. And all that is just the label to try to make it sound more palatable to people. Because anybody that has even a cursory understanding of history knows that how evil and vile and wicked and satanic and tyrannical that socialism is. Historically, it cannot be denied. But now they want to give it the name of democratic socialism and try to rebrand it and cast it as something that is good and right and moral and helpful and has the interests of all people. It has the interests of all people in mind and so forth. But it's all nonsense. And the so-called democratic socialists, they like to point to European countries, like European areas like Scandinavia, and say, look, such full, such happy, such smiling, such wealthy, such educated peoples who couldn't be more pleased with their well-functioning socialist governments. Now, these, quote unquote, European socialist nations are on the record saying, bro, speaking to people like Bernie Sanders and AOC or whatever her name is, like, stop calling us socialist. And so, a couple things. Cheers, by the way. Coffee's up. These European nations, they're not socialists, but rather they're predicated on free markets. And that's one of the important things that people need to understand is that the whole ideology of socialism, for it to be propelled into an existing or established order, it requires capitalism. It requires a free market to fund it. But anyways, the European socialist, quote unquote, socialist nations, which they are not, they're predicated on free markets. Now, they're what you might call quasi-market systems that use state control to some extent, manipulation, welfare programs, to socialize particular industries in society, and the presence of socialized industries does not make a nation socialist, but it does make it immoral. And by the way, that's fundamental to my thesis tonight. To the extent that something is socialized, to that very same extent, it becomes immoral, and we'll talk about that. But second thing, in order to fund social programs, these European nations, and it's the same in the United States. By the way, there is social programs in the United States, and they're all retarded, all of them. They're all retarded. But in order to fund social programs, their governments tax the living daylights out of their citizens and infringe upon their freedoms. And that's just the way it goes. That is the price for anything that is socialized. The price is heavy taxes and the relinquishing of individual personal freedom. That's the way it goes. And free market taxation and violation of human freedom are necessary to fund and implement socialistic programs. It's the way it goes. Now, true socialism, of course, this is what they won't say, is a Venezuelan hellscape, is what it is. Now, the democratic socialists like Bernie Bozo and dumb Ascasio, they'll say, well, now Venezuela is not democratic socialism. That is not a paradigm or an example of what we are trying to accomplish. But the truth is that if people like Bernie Sanders were running our nation, we would be just as bad as Venezuela. It wouldn't take long. It took Venezuela about 12 years to be one of the wealthiest nations in the world, to become one of the most impoverished and just wrecked and ruined and oppressed nations in the world. And people starving, a destitute population under complete government control. And historically, this has always been the case, always. And you can just add genocide to it. That's exactly right. At any rate, for those who support or who are sympathetic to socialism, what that means is that you're a brainwashed moron. I said it. How dare you, sir? Blah blah blah. I said it. And I stand by it. And by the way, that's me being nice, because the only alternative to that, by my estimation, is that you're an evil, diabolical lunatic. So either you're ignorant because you're a brainwashed dum-dum, or you are an evil person. And I don't think there are any other options. Now, these brainwashed, and by the way, there's just a whole slew, particularly the millennial generation, the little skinny jeans wearing, girl shoe wearing, whatever. Little snowflakes, I guess. Not a term I use often. But they're the ones, for the most part, who are sympathetic to the false narrative. And the socialist narrative is something along the lines that, every capitalist is a racist, white, wealthy, greedy, businessman who spends his Saturdays, smoking cigars and, drinking whiskey or whatever, while he dumps toxic waste into a river that feeds groundwater to, a nearby orphanage for special needs kids or something just retarded like that. And the way the narrative goes is, capitalism is evil, socialism is good, but it's total inversion. It's total nonsense. The exact opposite is actually the case. Now, and by the way, I'm not exaggerating when I say that this is how the narrative goes. I mean, if you're a capitalist, you believe in a capitalistic economy, then what they do is they'll hurl all sorts of moral indictments against you. You're a bad person. You're a racist. All this kind of nonsense. And it's not hyperbole. That is the narrative. That is the narrative they're trying to push, and that is the perception that they're trying to create. And the nonsense propagated by the socialist dum-dums is something close to just trying to communicate or create, a false perception that not just capitalism as a system, but people that support capitalism are immoral and don't care about people and all this kind of stuff, but it's retarded. Now, socialism is the evilest economic system ever devised. Matter of fact, it's satanic at its core. It's something that's straight out of hell. It's satanically devised, spawned by evil, and is characterized by absolute evil. Now, I'm not saying everybody that that's a socialist is evil. Like I said a moment ago, if I said you're a brainwashed retard or a dum-dum because you support socialism, I'm actually giving you the benefit of the doubt and saying, okay, maybe you've just been brainwashed. Maybe you just don't get it. Maybe you're just, a dum-dum rather than a diabolical psychopathic maniac like Bernie Sanders, and so, socialism, as I said, is the most evil economic system ever created. And it's not just simply because it creates poverty, but because regardless of all the negative economic outcomes it necessitates, and it's always negative, always. History bears this out. And by the way, history is suppressed. They don't teach true history of the communist/socialist system in our universities, in our schools, because the grabblers that control the narrative, they don't want people, they want you to be dumb and ignorant of history. Because if you knew, even had a cursory understanding of history, you would never align yourself with socialism. It's so bad, and it's so vile, and it's so wicked. And, and not, as I said, not just because it creates poverty, which it necessarily does, but because as a system, it requires the elimination of human freedom, and that is evil. And by the way, that's what our forefathers fought and died for. Now I realize that the history that's been handed down to us concerning, even the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, World War I, World War II, it's the history that's been handed down needs to be corrected because the grabblers have worked very hard to rewrite it on critical issues. Now, these are all things that really happened, but there's more to the story. And by the way, next stream, possibly on Tuesday night, I'm going to do Ungrabbling History, and what I want to take up is a narrow element of history, and that is the untold truth behind Mean Mr. Mustache, because there's so much that is just simply written out of our history books. There's something that happened somewhere around the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, down through the Second World War, where the conspirators worked very hard to rewrite history and for nefarious, evil, and diabolical purposes. But anyways, I'm digressing. But fundamentally, the reason why I'm making the claim that socialism is evil is because it requires the elimination of individual human freedom. And with that being the case, economic considerations become secondary. Now, they're important because as an economic system, socialism does not work, but they are secondary. Primary is its abject moral failure in its necessary encroachment upon individual liberty and freedom. That's what socialism does. It is unconstitutional. It is anti-American. It is absolute theft, thievery. It is vile. It is wicked, and it is retarded. And if you fall for that junk, well, you know the end. Try not to call people retarded too many times. At any rate, but if you're pro-socialism, you're retarded. All right, let's move on. Despite, all the failures of the socialist economic system, abject poverty, historical genocide, millions of Americans have nevertheless been captivated and brainwashed by the nonsense of, Marxist socialism. And, this, of course, is not just retarded, it's extremely dangerous. And, fact, historically, socialism has only destroyed economies and led to tyranny. That is a fact. Let me say it one more time. Historical fact. Socialism as an economic system has only destroyed economies and led to absolute tyranny. Fact. And there's a reason for that. And that's because it is an inherently evil system that necessitates immoral acts and destroys individual human liberty and freedom. And that is my thesis. That's why the name of the stream is Socialism, the Evil Thievery of Anti-American Douchebags. And yes, Bernie Sanders is a douchebag. AOC is a douchebag, and the rest of the socialist crowd. And by the way, the whole Democratic Party is moving strongly towards quote unquote democratic socialism because they're becoming more and more convinced that it is a way to win the vote. But, the American people aren't stupid. I know we got a generation of young people that are pretty dumb, pretty easily manipulated, that go easily for the false promises. Oh, we're going to wipe out all your student debt and you don't have to work. We're going to give you a free paycheck. And, we're going to tax the daylights out of hardworking people so that you can have a lifelong paid vacation and all this kind of stuff. I mean, these little Starbucks, popping, hipster, douchebags, they like that kind of stuff. Free lifelong paid vacation? I'll vote for that. It's retarded. So anyways, what is socialism? By the way, we got a pretty long stretch tonight, guys, and I'm going to try to get through it. If it goes too long, then I'll just land the plane and we'll pick it up where we left off tonight. But Kiera, Caffeinated Assassin, Wifey, JC, what's up, bro? Cynthia, Ginger, I see all you guys there. Appreciate you tuning in tonight. If you have any comments, questions, comments, leave those, and I'll hit those. And by the way, if you have a mic drop, it's something I want to start instituting. I got to plug it consistently or it won't happen. But, I like mic drop. So if you have a mic drop about socialism, like a knockdown, statement or argument against socialism, just put it in there. Put it at the end of it, type mic drop, and I'll read it. Here, I'm going to do a mic drop just for the fun of it. Let's see if I got that. All right, here we go. All right, I'm in the message feed, y'all. That's my mic drop. Socialism is retarded. All right, where were we? Oh, what is socialism? Yeah, I guess I probably should go over some of the details of what it actually is. Now, the transition into a socialistic economy requires systematic brainwashing. And by the way, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to systematically brainwash a generation by a bunch of false promises and a bunch of nonsense. But it requires this sort of systematic brainwashing and ignorance concerning its true character. As I've said several times already, if anybody had even a cursory, just a basic understanding of history, they would know the true character of socialism, that it's vile, it's evil, it's tyrannical, it's genocidal, it destroys economy, and it destroys human freedom. It's evil as can be. And by the way, Bernie Sanders, I'm not advocating violence, okay? But America would be better off with him dead or gone. I mean, he's an evil, evil, evil person. Now, I'm not advocating violence. I didn't say, I know it's Christ-servative assassins, so forth. I'm not saying assassinate Bernie Sanders. Don't do that. That's dumb. You know, you can't play the game like that. You know, that's how you lose. That's not how you win. And I'm not advocating anybody, you know, to punch Bernie Sanders in his fat Jew nose either. But if somebody did, I get it, you know, but don't do it. Don't do it. But if you did, you know, I get it because he's so retarded that I can understand how he could provoke somebody to that. But anyways, and all of his followers too, bunch of feel the burn, you know, STD weirdos. Anyways, so he said, "How dare you? You're going to alienate, you know, all the Bernie Sanders people. Good, go away, all of you, all you socialist retards, go away. I don't want you here anyways." All right, comment. I don't think all young people buy into. Hopefully there's a few that have critically trained brain to see it for what it is. Yeah, so here's the thing. Now that's true. Plenty of young people aren't falling for it because they're smart enough to get it. But what our universities have been constructed to do over the last couple of generations is to destroy critical thinking. Traditionally, that's what the humanities department was for, was to create and cultivate critical thinking, was to train people to be able to read good literature in order to extract, you know, genuine utility that's beneficial to their own lives, families, and culture and nation. But the humanities have been completely destroyed by identity politic nonsense. And the point behind it is to destroy critical thinking. They don't want people to think critical. They want you just to believe the nonsense that they're spewing. That's what they want. They don't want critical thinkers. At any rate, what were we talking about? Oh, we're trying to talk about what socialism is. Yeah, if anybody understood the true nature of socialism, there's no way that you would fall for it. You know, you have to be completely ignorant of it as a system, as an economic and governmental system historically, because the evils perpetrated by it are just, you know, immeasurable. I mean, as I said already, either you have to be ignorant or you have to be an evil person to support that stuff and identify as socialist. Now, most people who identify as socialists do not understand the historical ideas associated with it. And as I said already, it's because that knowledge is suppressed and a false narrative is generated and propagated concerning it. That's what happens. That's what's taking place. And because they're ignorant of what socialism is, they have been swayed by the false promises, you know, of all the left-wing, globalist, ankle-biting, anti-American, you know, psychopathic grabbler puppets. That's what's happened. And you know what socialism alleges to do is empower the collective over the rights of the individual citizen and the business owner. That's what it alleges to do, which is bad enough and immoral enough, and we'll get to that. To exalt the collective over the individual is anti-constitutional, it's anti-American. In order for the collective to prosper, the individual must be primary. That is fundamental to the Declaration of Independence, and that's fundamental to the founding of our nation. And that's what they're trying to undo. That's what they're trying to get rid of. And you know, but the reality of socialism is that it empowers a tyrant or an oligarch over everybody else. That's what it does. And democratic socialism isn't no different. It isn't no different. All it is it's just a different place on the spectrum moving towards absolute tyrannical communism. That's all it is. That's it. And you know, Marxist socialism in its final stage is called communism, and there is no real distinction between socialism and communism. The distinctions that people try to make, it's all artificial. And you know, the European style socialism, or you know, the democratic socialism that we hear so much about now, it's all nonsense. And every step closer to socialization requires an encroachment upon individual liberty and freedom. That's exactly right. And every socialized aspect of our United States economy has encroached upon our individual freedom and has necessitated us participating in immoral activity. Straight up. Got the fist pound from Java Joe right there. And so, you know, it's alleged that, you know, exploitation is the natural result of having separate economical groups in society with varying degrees of wealth. That's the false narrative of socialism, that somebody having more money than somebody else necessitates the person with more money to some extent exploiting the person with less money. But it's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. And, simply defined, classes are merely groups with different amounts of wealth and thus different degrees of economic power. Now, of course, that is to say nothing of the exploitation through taxation, the stealing of the money of the hardworking citizen, the hardworking, creative, and industrious citizen. And that's what socialism really does. So this is the inversion of it all. Socialism claims that those who work hard and are benefactors of their hard work and obtain wealth are exploiting those with less money. Nonsense. The reality is that the socialist system steals money from those who work hard and are creative and industrious and gives it away to people who do not deserve it and did not work for it and did not earn it. Now I want to rewind. If a man don't work, neither shall he eat. Straight up. Now, the working class, which the socialist system is supposedly designed to protect from exploitation, is ironically the most exploited by the socialist system, and that is a fact. So it's this big pretentious situation where they say, we are going to protect the working class from being exploited by the more wealthy. But the reality is that the working class are the people that are most exploited by the socialist system. They're the ones that are getting ripped off by these socialist bozos. And by the way, you know what the end game, for all of the socialist proposals is they want to tax the living daylights out of us. That's exactly right. And by the way, all the fake promises and the hollow promises and all of that, it's all a ruse. It's all a ruse. It's all a power play. They don't intend on keeping any of the promises at all. And their economic proposals are so far outside of what is realistically achievable. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And everybody knows it. I mean, anybody with any economic sense knows that it can't even be achievable. All it is just a fake, phony, hollow promise to try to rope people in to vote for their globalist agenda so they can march ahead to the end of destroying individual human freedom and liberty. That's what they're after. They're not trying to pay off your student loans. They're trying to destroy your freedoms. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. And don't be so gullible. Seriously. Don't be so gullible. And by the way, the whole, federal aid to put people through college, it was all calculated and it's orchestrated to drive people into enormous debt that even the constitutional right of bankruptcy does not alleviate. Now, I'm not advocating bankruptcy. I think that bankruptcy is immoral, but here's the point. They created a system to drive people into enormous debt that they'll never pay off with no escape from it at all, with a reason and with a purpose. And that is so that they could come through the back door and say, hey, I got a solution to the problem of your slavery to debt. And that is, we're going to forgive all your debt. All you have to do is just relinquish your individual liberty and freedom. And that's what it's all about, straight up. Straight up. And that's a fact. Fact. And so what's up with Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto? According to Marxist socialism, socialism attempts to resolve the world's exploitation problem by destroying classes entirely. In other words, no economic classes, no classes of any kind. Everybody, gets the same amount of apples. Don't matter who worked harder. Don't matter who's lazy. Everybody gets the same amount of apples. Everybody gets the same, pink underwear. Everybody gets the same everything. And, a vital aspect of this effort is what Marx referred to as common ownership of property, or better stated, how it was explicitly stated by Marx himself, and that is the abolition of private property, which, by the way, is anti-biblical to the core. And by the way, socialism is not just anti-American, it's anti-biblical, evil. Central to the meaning of socialism is common ownership, which historically has been reduced to the sole ownership of the oligarch. And that's right. So it comes in like, hey, guys, let's just redistribute everything and we all get the same, this, utopian wet dream, right? Everybody's equal. We just hold hands and sing kumbaya. Everybody gets the same amount of, strawberries, and all this kind of stuff, right? And, but, that's how it marches into a culture. But you know what the end game is the sole ownership of everything by the oligarch, historically fact. And so what happens is an economy is destroyed, a nation is driven into abject poverty, except for the guy at the top of the stack, his close comrades, and his military. And that's about it. Whoever he finds useful and he needs to feed and clothe in order to protect his own power. And that's it. That's it. And the pretentious notion that the resources of the world being owned in common by an entire global population. By the way, socialism is globalism. I think I hinted at that already. It's all about globalism, and globalism is a satanic idea. This pretentious notion of common ownership, all it is a satanic trick that is marching straight on into a totalitarian state all the way through, and don't be fooled by it. Marx advocated strongly for the end of private property. That's one of the fundamental tenets of Marxism, communism, socialism, and it is fundamental to his whole theory. And Marx said this, and I quote, he said, the theory of the communists may be summed up in a single sentence: abolition of private property. Did you get it? So according to Marx, his whole theory could be summed up by the abolition of private property. And the reason for that is because the system will not work unless government has control over everything. That's exactly right. And under the Marxist socialist model, there is no private property or private industry or private business. And by the way, I'm a small business owner, and Bernie Sanders, who by the way is a millionaire hypocrite, he's one of the 1% that he preaches so ardently and adamantly against. That's right. He's a phony, a bozo, a fake, a liar, a hypocrite, and a millionaire. And if he believed in the fundamental tenets and principles of socialism so adamantly, why don't you start writing checks? Matter of fact, Bernie, I want you to mail me my check. I want you to redistribute your wealth. I want my check. Of course, I'm not holding my breath because he's not writing no check to anybody. All he's doing is exploiting the American people with a retarded philosophy. You think he cares about poor people? You think he cares about minority groups? It's all a joke. It's a straight up joke. And so on the socialist model, there is no private property. There is no there's no private industry, no private business. The state owns it all. No money. This is the socialist utopian idea. No money, no buying, no selling, just retarded bread lines, which by the way, Bernie Sanders, advocates. He thinks that's a wonderful thing, that we just get our vouchers and we go get in line and we get our bread and we get our sugar and, whatever they give us, whatever the state decides we need to survive. Yeah, he's all about that. On the record, by the way. I know I'm getting a little wound up tonight, guys. Appreciate you tuning in, by the way. And so, just like Marx said, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs, right? Even that's a trick. It doesn't work. And we'll talk about that as we go forward a little bit. Anyways, by the way, when Marx said to each according to his ability, to each according to his needs, historically what that has been reduced to is do what we say or else, and you get what we give, and you smile and say thank you or else. Historically, that's what it is reduced to. And the democratic socialist, quote unquote democratic socialist, they'll say no, 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 that's not true at all. Everybody will have the right to participate in the social decisions that affect them through the democratic process, right? But don't fall for it. It's all a trick. It's all nonsense. Democratic socialism, is nothing more than a deception tactic designed to make the Marxist idea seem more palatable, to the end of expanding government, to the end of total government and global control, and of course, to the elimination of human liberty and freedom, straight up. And the Socialist Party USA, you can go on their website, and I got a quote from them, and I quote, and they say, in a socialist system, the people own and control the means of production and distribution. Lies. They're lying like dogs. And then they continue, through democratically controlled public agencies, in other words, government, right? And they continue, the primary goal of economic activity is to provide the necessities of life, including food, shelter, healthcare, education, childcare, cultural opportunities, and social services. And by the way, all of that is washed out on the socialist system. All education becomes is basically formal training to do whatever they tell you to do. If the government decides that you're going to pick strawberries, then guess what? The extent of your education is going to be to train you to pick strawberries and nothing else. No human vision or aspiration or goals. All of that is washed out. It all just terminates in everything that is fundamental to what it means to be American is gone on the socialist system. Gone. I just can't understand how people fall for this nonsense. It's beyond retarded. So, how exactly would this sort of a socialist scheme work? How is it? How would a system work where everybody gets the same? There's no class disparities. How would it work? Socialists don't even know. These guys have no ideas. They got a number of dumb ideas. Like they'll say, oh, well, you'll get vouchers. Everybody get the same house. Vouchers. You go get in your bread. All this dumb stuff, right? But the reality is it does not work. Historically, that is a fact. It has been proven. It's not, and what is even worse is it's not intended to work. What it is actually intended to do is enslave people and nothing else. All of this, we care about, the oppressed, and we care about the people that are being exploited by a capitalist system and all that. It's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. The only thing the socialist system was devised to do was to expand globalism, destroy human liberty and freedom, and enslave people. And that's it. It's all so deeply dark and just horribly satanic. And so, in Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto, he outlined 10 steps that the most advanced nations could take to move closer, to their classless, globalist social utopia, really despotism. But at any rate, I'll enumerate these for you quickly. Number one, the abolition of private property. We've already said that. That's gone. Number two, a heavy progressive or graduated income tax. That's right. That's what they're trying to do. That is where we're at on the spectrum right now. Tax the daylights out of the people to the end of their own slavery. Number three, the abolition of all rights of inheritance. This works in conjunction with the abolition of private property. Government gets it all. Number 4, the confiscation of property. In other words, personal property, gone. The state owns it all. Number 5, the centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and exclusive monopoly. In other words, the government controls every aspect of the economic system. Number 6, the centralization of the means of communication and transportation in the hands of the state. That means you cannot communicate except for on the terms allotted or allowed by the government. It's total and absolute tyranny, total government control. And not only that, but you can't travel. You can't go from A to B unless the government says so. Yeah, that's exactly right. Number 7, the extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state to bring it into cultivation of wastelands and the improvement of soil generally in accordance with a common plan. In other words, all state-owned agriculture, the equal liability of all labor, the establishment of industrial armies, especially for agriculture. You know, everything is controlled by the state, government control of everything. You can't just go, get a job as a farmer because that's something that you're inclined to do. You are a farmer, and you are only a farmer if the state says, listen, buddy, that's what you're doing. And that's it. Number 9, combination of agriculture with manufacturing industries. Of course, the state owns all manufacturing, not just agriculture, all manufacturing. And the gradual abolition of the distinction between town and country. There's your globalism, by a more equitable distribution of the population over the world. In other words, people live where the state tells you to live. And that's it. And number 10, free education for all children. Well, isn't that convenient? In other words, free indoctrination for all children. And remember what I said already, education is simply reduced to training to be a cog in the satanic socialist will to do exactly what they tell you to do. In other words, you lose all your liberty as a parent, you lose all your rights, your children become products and property of the state, and they do exactly what the state tells them to do, and they're trained to that end. And historically, if you oppose that, they just kill you. That's fact. Fact. Appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. Coffee's all gone. Maybe I'll start winding down a little bit. And so, what is the connection between socialism and communism anyways? Well, the West have become largely ignorant on this issue. And the truth is, and I said it already, there is no difference. The distinction is completely artificial. The differences lie only in where you are in the spectrum of the implementation of it. And that's it. That's the only distinction. The march into slavery, the march into socialism is the march into slavery, and the democratic socialistic idea is just somewhere out here on the spectrum. And the only distinction from an absolute despotism, an absolute communist globalist state, is simply where we are on the spectrum. That's it. Philosophically speaking, there is no distinction. It's completely artificial. And socialism, which is communism, claims its primary aim is to push the world in the direction of there being fewer classes, less wealth disparity, and more collectively owned industries and properties. But it's all nonsense, and the democratic idea is nothing more than a trick. It's all immoral at every single point, and it is destructive, as I said several times already tonight. It's destructive of individual human liberty and freedom. Now, I think this is an important question to ask: is socialism even possible? The dum-dums will say, well, yeah, of course it's possible. Not only is it possible, but it's to be preferred, and it's better than capitalism, and blah, 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 blah. Shut up, stupid. You've probably, if you got your ear to the ground, you've heard just the dumb rhetoric, right? Well, yeah, it's possible. It's just never been fully implemented, and in the history of the world, and the historical disasters are not the real deal. They're a perversion of what socialism actually is. Communist Russia and communist China, and Nazi Germany, and North Korea and, Venezuela, none of those capture the real socialist ideal. They're all misrepresentations and perversions of what socialism is actually about. It's also retarded. And listen, socialism is a one-way street to absolute tyranny. And there are no exceptions historically. And there never will be any exceptions. And that is because of the fundamental fallen nature of human beings. Straight up. Straight up. And we can add more reasons to that, but that's why I say the fundamental reason is because people by nature are evil. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And Marxism, by my estimation, and I'm right, and I say that as humbly as I can, but Marxism, socialism is retarded, it's stupid, it's evil, and I'm right about that. And so, it's a psychopathic wet dream. It's not at all possible because key aspects are totally incompatible with, the essential features of human nature. Marxist socialists have built their entire system on several deeply flawed assumptions. The most critical being the retarded notion that it's possible to convince everyone to abandon their natural tendency to embrace personal freedom and ambition. The whole system is predicated on that. It's all nonsense. They say, look, guys, socialism will work. Everybody just has to agree and consent that we don't need freedom and liberty. We're going to sacrifice all of that for the good of the collective. It's all nonsense. It's all a lie. It does not work. And by the way, the sacrifice or the encroachment or the destruction of human liberty and freedom has never led to the benefit of the collective historically, and it never will. Never will. And so, of course, socialism destroys ambition and motivation. How could it not? I mean, a system that provides all workers, regardless of their talent and their work ethic, the same amount of wealth. It destroys ambition and motivation. I mean, why would someone be inclined to work hard and strive to excel when they simply will not be rewarded for it? And what is worse is that the lazy bum is an equal benefactor of all those who work hard. That's retarded. And, I guess we'll just all be motivated by some altruistic desire, for the collective, not because it's in our best interest to do so, but we'll just work hard, because we're just so altruistic and we got this we totally embrace this utopian idea, right? That if I just work hard, then everybody is just going to be such tremendous benefactors and human happiness and flourishing is going to, it's all nonsense. All of that is destroyed and washed out on the socialistic system. That idea, and by the way, that's fundamental to the socialist idea. Because when you say, why would somebody work hard when they're not a benefactor of their hard work? When somebody who's a lazy bum that doesn't do nothing is rewarded, is a benefactor of my hard work. Tell me, how is that in any way constructive, conducive to motivation and ambition? Thank you, baby. My wife is a hero and she brought me some fresh coffee. Thank you, wife. I guess she didn't want me to calm down. I'm going to keep it going. There we go. Appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. By the way, guys, I'm going to stoke this fire up. It's starting to get a little bit chilly. Not too bad. Hope you guys are having fun. I'm enjoying myself. And by the way, if you're just tuning in, you can go back and watch the stream after the fact. And if you're interested in the subject at all, which you should be, it'll be helpful to you. All right, so let's get back on track. Where was we? Where were we? We're talking about the destruction of motivation, right? And ambition. You know, ambition is out, because if you can't be rewarded for your hard work, then there's nothing to strive for. Ambition becomes moot. It becomes useless. And work ethic is completely washed out because you're not rewarded for it. The lazy bum gets the same reward as the person who works hard and has strong work ethic and applies themselves and so forth. And you know, for socialism to work, productivity must remain constant. You know, and it must remain constant without any incentive of financial reward. In other words, we have to produce the agriculture, we have to produce, you know, the livestock, the industry has to go on, you know, the basic necessities of life, so on and so forth. Production has to remain constant in order for it to work, or accelerate even as the population grows. But, you know, the truth is, historically, wherever, you know, such a model has been imposed on a large scale, productivity has always fallen off. And there's a reason for that, and it's obvious. You know, when the lowest performing, you know, laziest worker receives the same wealth as the highest performing, hardest worker, you know, what it does is it kills motivation to work hard, or to work harder than the most productive employee, because there is no financial reward for it. And so instead, the entire workforce only needs to work as hard as the least productive person. And to put it simply, the entire socialist economy is a race right down to the bottom. I only need to work as hard as the laziest person. And so there we go, right down the slide towards slothfulness. It's a grease slide towards a community of sluggards. And that's all it is. And that's one reason. And right now what I'm doing is I'm criticizing it as an economic system. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. All it does, and by the way, when everybody gets on the grease slide to a society of sluggards, you know what that does? Is it destroys the entire economy. Production just shuts down and everybody starves. Yeah. My coffee's good. Thanks, wife. Just a race to the bottom, just a grease slide right to hell. You know, the socialist utopia is an absolute slide into abject poverty. Historically, always. And there will never be an exemption to that. All this nonsense about somehow the democratic socialist idea is somehow going to come to the rescue, where past implementations of socialism has failed, the democratic idea will work, is nonsense. It's all lies. All of it. It's all lies. And so, you know, the psychopathic wet dream of, you know, of the socialist is that, you know, everybody gets to do what they love to do, right? All nonsense. You know, if it sounds too good to be true, that's because it is. You know, that is nothing more than, you know, vote pulling propaganda. You know, it's total nonsense, devoid of economic realities. I mean, only somebody that is completely retarded concerning economics could fall for something that's stupid. And, you know, there are many essential jobs that must be attended to in, you know, in any functioning civil society, you know, and many involve jobs that virtually nobody would do if they had options, right? Let me tell you, have you ever met anybody that says, you know what, my goal in life is to scoop up crap? You know, that's my ambition, that's my goal. You know, that's where I want to go with my life. You know, I want to scoop crap. Or, you know, and we could go right on down the line. I mean, there's so many difficult jobs. And by the way, I'm all about blue collar. And by the way, those of you out there, blue collar jobs that scoop crap, I am not looking down my nose at you. Those are needed jobs, and I appreciate you working hard. By the way, you keep this country going. You know, I'm an electrician by trade. I'm an electrical contractor. You know, I'm blue collar to the core. That's why I hate all these gamma, nonsensical politicians that constantly looking down their nose at us, trying to call us blue collar people stupid and ignorant, and all the names that they throw out. And it's like, listen, pal, if we decided to go on strike for a week, your water wouldn't work, your lights wouldn't go on, and you wouldn't have nothing to stuff your fat face with. Jerk. I'm getting really wound up. Those of you who catch this stream on the rebound, appreciate all you guys subscribing. We just got a ton of subscribers over the last week. Insane. Appreciate it a lot. If you haven't subscribed, the subscribe button is going to be right about, let's see if I get this right, there. And so hit that subscribe, hit that bell so you can get it when we go live. So now I think the goal is try to be more consistently getting these streams out on the same nights each week, so people that want to participate can kind of navigate their schedule. And so I appreciate you guys tuning in. And so what were we talking about? Oh, we're talking about the idea that everybody gets to do whatever they love to do, right? It's a straight, absolute dog-faced lie. They lie like dogs when they say stupid stuff like that. There's so many jobs that are necessary for society to function that if given the choice, many people would not want to do or would not do. That doesn't mean that you can't find joy in your work. That doesn't mean that the garbage man can't find joy in his work, right? Or the guy that works at the sewage plant can't find joy in his work. But, if somebody came and said, hey, I'll pay you the same amount of money to play with puppies all day. Where do you think that's going? And so at any rate, the point I'm trying to make is, the guy that scoops crap or picks up trash in a socialistic system is awarded the same wealth as, the little millennial douchebag that plays with puppies at the pet store all day. Am I alienating my entire millennial viewer base? Maybe I should walk that back a little bit. All millennials ain't retarded scumbags. It might just be the beard, guys. I tell you, I get more arrogant. As the beard grows longer, I get more arrogant. I got to keep this thing clean shaved to keep me humble. Anyways, my wife says I love me a blue collar man. Only one blue collar man, I hope. Just one. This one. Anyways, love you too, wife. And okay, so what about those who won't work? What are you gonna do with that, Bernie? What are you gonna do with that, dum-dums? Did you know that the recent economic proposal, socialist proposal, the Green New Deal or whatever it's called, just a big pile of trash that ain't even that not even good for firewood, although it needs to be burned. Part of that proposal is, if you don't want to work, don't worry about it. You'll still get a paycheck. Now tell me, have you ever heard something more retarded and more stupid than that? And by the way, it's all lies, by the way. It's all just lies to pull voters from lazy, sluggard people who don't want to work. So what about them? What about the people that don't want to work? Are we going to force them to work? Threats of imprisonment, violence. Are we going to compel them to work? Or compel them to work more productively? Of course not. You'll never hear the socialists say that. And, on the socialist system is predicated, remember, on there being zero class differences. In other words, on the socialist utopian idea, there are no ruling government officials or oppressive regimens. Of course, this is historically false, and it always will be. But this is, the utopian socialist, nonsensical wet dream. And many of the modern socialist retards argue that the people that don't want to work, they don't need to work. I mean, after all, there's plenty of wealth to go around. We don't need all the able-bodied people to work. So, those that don't want to work can just pursue their own personal interests instead. We'll just pay you to just go on, your little artsy, lifelong paid vacation where you can sip lattes and, pretend you're an intellectual retard. I don't know why there ain't 10,000 people watching tonight. I mean, we're hitting a home run tonight. And this, of course, is the attractiveness of socialism. It panders to all the pathetic, lazy, people that, all the slothful people that just want to be a lazy bum, and sip lattes all day. And, how many people, let me ask you a question. How many people do you think would choose not to work if given the option? What do you think? And the plain truth is that if no one must work, most people would not work. And that's exactly right. And so, socialism is an impossible dream. It's all nonsense from top to bottom. And, if you were to boil down all the Marxist thinking into one idea, it would be that Marx wanted to end classes, in class disparity and distinctions, which simply means no varying degrees of wealth. And even if we could have a world in which all people would voluntarily, share all wealth equally, there are nevertheless several severe problems that undercut much of, this retarded kind of thinking. For instance, in a world without classes, how would finite resources like land be distributed, right? So I'm still criticizing socialism as an economic system. Maybe when we get to it as a moral system, maybe I'll land the plane right there. Otherwise, this might turn into a 3-hour stream tonight. But, and so the question is simply, in a world without classes, how would we distribute finite resources? Like, how would land be distributed? What I want to know is who gets to live on the beach? Because, if we're distributing, land and allocating sections where people are going to live and reside, then I want to live on the beach. That's what I want. And, I got a feeling, and I think I'm right. I still think I'm batting 1,000 on this thing, that more people would choose to live on the beach than in the frigid Midwest or something, right? I think more people would choose to say, you know what? I want a house on the beach, and I'll contribute to the socialist system by fishing. I think that would be great. I think that would be outstanding. And you can go to the frozen Midwest and you can harvest, or you can drill for oil. That's what you can do, right? You guys see the problem here? Even if people were to have the same house, the same size yard, not everybody would get to live on the beach. And that's the point I'm making, which means in effect, you would nevertheless still have classes of people, those who live on the beach and those who want to live on the beach but can't. And even more importantly, not everyone can live in their ideal locations, because if they did, there simply just wouldn't be enough people to work, the massive farmlands, cut down trees, drill for oil, natural gas, etc., right? It just simply, it's retarded. So how can you have no class disparity? Listen, any implementation on any point of this system necessarily creates class disparities. And so what we're talking about is, a delusional utopian idea. It's a dystopia in disguise is what it is. And, the common thread that runs through all socialist thinking is that property ownership should be collective, and that as a system, it will work because people will choose to behave in ways that seem contradictory to all of human history and nature. That's what is necessary for socialism to work. Let me say it again. The idea is that all of a sudden, regardless of all of human history, people are just all of a sudden going to behave in ways that are completely contradictory to ways that they've behaved through all human history, and are in ways that are absolutely contradictory to human nature. For example, in the Utopian development, people will not be as nearly concerned about competition or their own personal welfare as they are today. That's just going to happen. That's the Utopian, delusion, right? All of a sudden, people are just going to be like, you know what? All of human history is wrong. And me, along with everybody else on earth, are just going to set aside our own personal interest and welfare for the collective idea. Total nonsense. Another thing is the notion that all people voluntarily choose to work jobs that no one wants, and that they will do so in exchange for the exact same amount of wealth as everyone else receives. So the idea is, and this is the utopian delusion, is that people will say, you know what? I will gladly be the poop scooper while Joe over here gets the beach house and gets to fish. And by the way, Joe says, I'm down for the fishing gig. Of course. Me too. But it's all nonsense, guys. It's all nonsense. And again, talking about the utopian delusion, future laborers, the idea is that they will just somehow agree to work, even while knowing, to work hard and apply themselves, even while knowing that they receive no additional wealth or benefits as a result of their labor, while at the same time knowing that if they were to choose to stop working, they could pursue their own hobbies and personal interests whenever they want. So this is the idea, okay, that somehow people are going to be like, wait a minute, okay, I can work hard, whatever that may be. I can apply myself, work hard at the factory, at the farm, whatever, at the sewage plant, whatever, while being compensated the same as, the puppy pedders or the beachside fishermen, while at the same time knowing that I don't have to do this, that I could just be the benefactor of a lifelong paid vacation. I hope you guys can see just how nonsensical and how retarded and how stupid all of this is. And so these ideas are not just radical, they're absolutely delusional and fundamentally just retarded. All right. So now this is where I would like to shift gears. Let's see how long we've been going. I don't see my timer here. Does it show me? Oh, yeah. We've been going about an hour. So I think we're about halfway there. Bear with me for a second, guys. I'm trying to deliberate in my own mind if I should go for another hour out here. Because I think this would be a good spot to land the plane if I'm going to land the plane. Because essentially what we've done up to this point is sort of enumerate the fundamental tenets of socialism, show that it's all lies, that it's all nonsense, and then criticize it as a workable economic system, that it's not, and also criticize its historical implementation as that which is completely genocidal, tyrannical, and leads to total despotism. And it doesn't tend to a utopia, but a dystopia, straight up. So with that, I think I will land the plane. Give it to it in a little bit of smaller size here tonight, smaller bite size tonight. I think this is a good place to stop. So tomorrow night, we'll do Socialism, the Evil Thievery of Anti-American Douchebags, Part 2. All right? And so with that, and where we're going to pick it up, probably what I'll do tomorrow night is I'll do a little bit of review, and then we'll get into a moral critique of socialism, which is fundamental to my whole thesis, right? Fundamental to my whole thesis on this thing. And so I appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. Like, share, subscribe, boom, right there. Let's get the word out. Christ-Servative Assassin. We're going to get out of here tonight. God bless. Soli Deo Gloria.
It's Christ-Servative Assassin, truth stay shining, busting on you wizards so the truth stay climbing. It's Christ-Servative Assassin, truth stay shining, busting on you wizards so the truth stay climbing. It's Christ-Servative Assassin, truth stay shining, busting on you wizards so the truth stay climbing. It's Christ-Servative Assassin, truth stay shining, busting on you wizards so the truth stay climbing.